teachers are being forced to be really innovative in the way that they are delivering lessons to students. There are so many cool apps for education out there that people are using to get students engaged so that they actually want to do the work that teachers are assigning.
Hey everyone, welcome to Virtual Coffee Break with Bublup. I'm your host, Krista, and today I'm interviewing Ari Watkins, an international math teacher at a boarding school in Thailand. And we've got a really interesting interview today all about how COVID-19 and everything sort of took her traditional teaching environment, turned it upside down. Now it's all online, and she's going to give us all the tips about how, if you're a teacher as well trying to navigate this crazy situation, you can do so successfully and effectively as well. So welcome, Ari. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So you're in Thailand right now, right? What are you drinking? What do you drink for breakfast in Thailand?
So this is a fruity black morning blend tea. I don't. It's one of the local blends here. So
very nice. Sounds delicious.
Yeah. And you?
Got my Black Americano, my favorite, as always.
Classic.
Yeah, classic for sure. What is your teaching scenario like right now? What's going on?
Sure. So like Krista said, I work at an international boarding school, and we got word basically a week before spring break that we were going to be doing distance learning after we had sent all of the kids home. So we had basically a 36-hour turnaround, and then we were teaching online. So a lot of us were really trying to scramble to figure out what that looks like. And the other thing is, like, a lot of our kids live or are from China, and they all flew back home. They were like, peace out, we're not trying to deal with this. So half of our population remained in Thailand, and the other half basically left to go back to their respective home countries. So we've been trying to use all of these different platforms to make sure that kids are still engaged while we're giving these lessons, because we're still giving grades. And so we're just trying all sorts of different things out. It's a little nuts, but it's working, kind of.
Can imagine that would be a pretty challenging situation, the whole distance learning movement. Yeah, like you said, that 36-hour turnaround is crazy. A lot of thinking on your feet. What are some tips that you have, or what are some things that you learned in that process of making that transition as smoothly as possible?
I think the first thing is to have grace with yourself. So as a teacher who teaches in a classroom, you vibe off of what your students give you back. And when you're teaching online, you're speaking to a screen, or you're putting up worksheets, or you're just giving them directions without seeing their reactions. So part of it is just knowing that this is new for both them and you. And it's okay to make mistakes. Just when you're teaching in front of a class, you're going to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes online too.
Are there any is there any specific things that you did to make that transition? Because there's obviously Zoom, right? So what are some other kind of practical things that you and your school implemented?
So I've actually been using Bublup, using the folders and kind of creating mini websites using the role feature, so that students have access to all of my lessons, my videos, and they're accessible in Thailand as well as China, which makes it easy to just kind of send to one link rather than 7 different platforms.
You're truly an international teacher. That's really cool. So you put all your stuff in Bublup, and now the kids are able to sort of access what kind of things do you put in there actually? Is it just their homework assignments, or how does?
So it's kind of a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything. I have a classroom webpage that I've been using. So on there, because we've been doing Zoom calls, I have recordings of all the Zoom calls. I have videos of examples for the lessons, instructional videos. I have their homework up there. We're still using Google platforms to turn in work for those that can, but otherwise they're just turning them into their own folders.
Okay. So actually,
Yeah.
so you had Google platform, you had the Google platform that some kids are still using because that's what your school did. But for the other kids, you like had to find something else that you
Yeah.
could use. All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, really glad that that worked out then. Do you think that this sort of, this distance learning experience, movement, do you think it'll hold? Is there longevity here with this?
It's a really good question. I think in some aspects, there's absolutely longevity in distance learning. But what I think parents are realizing, a lot of people that aren't teachers are realizing, is that there is such a benefit to actually sending kids to school. Even talking with some of my kids, they do not like distance learning. It's not what they signed up for. Granted, there are a lot of kids that do thrive on kind of an online environment where they can choose who they interact with, and they don't need to interact with people, you know, that don't like them or they aren't friends with. But for my kids, in such a small school, they need that kind of community aspect. They need to talk to people that they wouldn't normally interact with. For a lot of students, not necessarily the ones at my school per se, but there's a lot of students that come to school to get out of the house for whatever reason is going on at home. Their safe space is school. And so with everybody kind of cooped up at home right now, we aren't able to have those avenues of exploration like we normally would, because we're all being kind of cramped in. But that being said, I think that teachers are being forced to be really innovative in the way that they are delivering lessons to students. Obviously, you still have your traditional lecturers that are like writing on whiteboards and whatnot, but there are so many cool apps for education out there that people are using to get students engaged so that they actually want to do the work that teachers are assigning, which I think is something that is very much needed.
Very cool. I love that answer. And I think that probably can translate into sort of any kind of teaching, whether you're in the classroom or not. It's just sort of like turning your brain into engagement mode. Like, what can we do to make these kids feel more present, be more engaged with the learning and everything. So yeah, very cool. I love that. Do you have any final tips on keeping kids engaged, since it sounds like that's really the biggest challenge that's happening right now?
Yeah, I think my biggest tips is to just mix things up a bit. Still be your goofy, silly self on camera. That's why students usually love certain classes so much. Keeping it simple enough that they're not overwhelmed by the amount of information that you're giving them.
Simple, silly, and fun. I love it. Those are great tips. I learned a lot, even though I'm not a teacher. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what your day-to-day life is as an educator and now as a distance educator. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
You're so welcome. We are unfortunately out of time to keep talking, but I really think it's a fascinating subject, and I think, as you had said earlier, this is a really challenging time. So if there are any teachers out there who may want to get in touch with you or sort of ask you about the techniques that you have, or even how you use Bublup in keeping your class more engaged, what will be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Probably Instagram. My handle is along with Ari. I am on there a lot, so if you send a message, I will most likely see it.
Perfect. Great. Okay, cool. Well, definitely take Ari up on that offer. Thank you so much again for sharing all of your wisdom and for coming on the show. It's nice having coffee with you, or tea.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Ari. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Bye.